A chance find in Japan of a rare guitar model. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Alright, I gotta give a shout out to my buddy, Paul Fraley's Guitarsenal over on Reverb. He saw this rare Gibson model get listed by one of those Japanese brokers on eBay, and granted, it wasn't in the best of shape, and it was a very new broker. In case you don't understand, sometimes you'll find a guitar listed multiple times by different sellers. Somebody over in Japan is listing another shop's inventory. You might think, hey, that's kind of sketchy. But in many ways, it's great because it lets you, as a buyer in the USA, know certain guitars are for sale, and yeah, you're gonna pay them a premium to buy it and then ship it to you. It is a legit service, but this guy was very new. He had a lot of bad feedbacks, but you gotta check why. Is it because the guitar was bad, or is it because salty buyers where he couldn't actually send the guitar because it sold somewhere else? So needless to say, when he actually shipped this, I was pretty ecstatic. Since no other dealers had it listed, I thought for sure it had already been gone. But fair warning, now that you're armed with that knowledge, a lot of times old beat-up guitars out of Japan have way more issues than they describe, and I don't think it's necessarily intentional. Sometimes it's just a translation error. I'm hoping this one's alright, because it's not all original, but this is a very rare model. Look at this, my friends. It's another M3, but what is this? 2 humbuckers. That's right, some M3 guitars did ship with 2 humbuckers. Typically, an M3 would look like this. It would have 2 humbuckers and a single coil in the middle, and you'd have a lot of fancy electronics. This bad boy doesn't have any of the fancy electronics. As far as like our switching system goes, it's just a regular through-way toggle switch. But we still do have a coil splitting option here. They have this Majesty-esque body before the Majesties came out, so it rests against you really nicely. It's got your forearm contours, so that's very nice. It's also got your belly cut. The heel design of these things, it's awesome. It's effortless, it gets out of your way. It's a full 2-octave scale, so 24 frets. And on top of that, I just think it looks cool, especially with our maple fretboard that has these black pearloid arrowhead markers on it. That's very un-Gibson-like. And then you get the sweet reverse Explorer headstock. I've always thought that was cool. So you're probably wondering, what model exactly is this? Well, let's recap the Gibson M3. So Gibson tried long and hard throughout the 80s to come out with a successful Super Strat. You could technically say it started all the way in the 70s with the Gibson S1. The first big official take on a Super Strat was perhaps the Victory series. And then they started to toy around with SGs and Explorers that used an HSS setup. You had the US1, the U2, the Wayne Charvel designed models. But what they finally ended on was something called the M3. And the only reason these things did not sell as well as they could have is they were just too late to the party. I mean, by the time these came out, it was the early 90s, when the whole Super Strat craze was slightly dying down. There were 10 different models within the lineup. There's the Gibson M3 Standard, which you see for sale all the time. They've got a few different colors that you can find. Then there was also an M3 Deluxe. We have documented one of those. Basically, it has cool sandwich-bodied woods of walnut, dyed poplar, and maple. I've always liked those things. But then there's the model that we're talking about today, the M3H. H standing for humbuckers. So the standard one, it's just like a regular M3, except for you don't have the pickguard and you don't have the single coil in the center. But then, just like the M3 Deluxe, you've got the M3H Deluxe. So again, we can see we've got the walnut top, we've got the dyed poplar, we've got the maple, and then that continues on to the back, and you even get some figuring on certain examples. It just depends if you're lucky or not. With the trem plate off, you can see all the layers again, including the red in there. There was also an M3 Stealth, which we've documented in a different episode, that has a Carina body and a Floyd Rose. And that's the 5 M3s, but there's also an M4 version. They had a different tremolo system on it, and they featured ebony fretboards. So the M4 Standard, it's ebony fretboard and dots. Everything else is pretty similar to the M3s. Then there's the M4S Deluxe. Now if you're thinking, okay, Deluxe, layered body again. No, this time it's black limba, kind of like the Stealth, except for we have the different style tremolo unit on it. So that's all the original ones. However, after a brief period of these being discontinued in the late 90s, there was the M3 All-American series, which is kind of cool because it's got 3 humbuckers in it, and a completely different headstock design with the Steinberger gearless tuners. And then finally, in the early 2010s, we had M3 reissue, I guess you could say. Those are different. The regular standards had a poplar body, and the reissues have a mahogany body, and they came in some pretty radical colors. And then you can kind of count these within the M3s. Just remember they're Les Pauls. So there's the M3 Les Paul Studio, then there's the M3 Les Paul Classic. M3 referring to the pickup layout, which if you want to learn about that, check out a regular M3 video. I'll eventually document one of the Les Pauls, but the M3 controls in general are pretty fancy. But I'm not gonna lie to you, I really like the simplistic layout of this one. Unfortunately, our bridge pickup has been replaced, as well as the ring. So that means this is not the most representative guitar of this series, but it should have been the 496R, and a 500T is relatively easy to replace. But I was really hoping the original might be in the case. Nope, it's just the trem bar, which is always nice to have, but there is some original case candy in here. Original Gibson strings hang tag, your typical combo lock that keeps the innocent innocent, and some sort of a Gibson USA sticker, I think. So now that we understand what these things are, what makes them special? I am not a super Strat guy, but I will never forget the first M3 that I played because it was just so effortless. So when I learned about all these other rare iterations and how uncommon they are to find, I set out on a quest to add every single one to my documentation channel. And honestly, I'd like to keep a complete set for my future museum because where else are you going to see every single version? Because some of these, they really did not make that many. Because you got to remember, all those iterations were within just a few year time frame. So how's our condition? Is everything okay? It smells like mothballs terribly, but trust me, guitars out of Japan smell ultra smoky, so I'm happy with that. The whole guitar has like a dirtiness to it, like it needs a good cleaning, but at the same time, sometimes you don't realize what all the specs are of the different models until you get it in person. I'm curious if this actually started life as a satin, because that's basically what it feels like. But yet it still has a glossiness, so I can't tell if it's just dirty and needs cleaned, or if I polish it, it'll become like ultra glossy. I'll have to do some more research before I clean it. But let's go ahead and throw this one on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. Alright, here we are 3 weeks later. I had a change of heart. I did not want to document this guitar in non-original condition, so I went and found a 500T pickup. I got ourselves a more correct looking pickup ring from Gibson, so it is now back to factory stock condition. Although if you're curious, this ended up being a Seymour Duncan Trembucker. And I actually did find a video from a shop in Japan who was selling this exact guitar at one point in time, utilizing this pickup, so if you want to hear that, you can find that. If anybody's interested in this, you can find it on my website. The reason I wanted to restore this back to original, besides being in my collection, is the fact that this is literally the only M3H Deluxe that has ever shown up as far as the internet is concerned. I mean, maybe someone's posted one to like their personal Instagram or something, but as far as Google search goes, this is the only one that pops up, so of course we need an original one. If somebody was trying to deceive you, how could you tell the difference? It appears the older 90s ones have slightly larger height adjustment screws, whereas if you come over here, this is what came in the modern pickup set, they are smaller. And also, the whole pickup ring is just a little bit less wide. Our vintage one here is about 3.48, and our modern one is 3.51. Another thing is the rings seem to have been a little bit taller. I didn't know to go for a neck or a bridge because these were relatively shallow profiles. The modern neck pickup is definitely a lot less thick than the old ones. Maybe I could have got away with a full bridge, but I'm okay with it as is. But it looks like a few sets of pickups might have been in here because our neck pickup is actually labeled by somebody else's neck, but it's still the 496R. And then over here we have our 500T. Full disclosure, I didn't go era correct. I got lucky and the Gibson garage just happened to have a 500T in stock. But that's okay because the 500T is one of those pickups that has never changed since it started in production. And if you remove the sticker from it, there's literally no way to tell. The wires are the same colors, still 4-conductor, but I'm documenting the tail so nobody ever gets confused. Bridge reads 14.55 k ohms, our neck position 8.31, and then the middle just for fun 5.44. But again, you can get half of that on each of your individual readings if that's what you're looking for. So here's what our pickup cavity looks like. It reads Antique Natural, which means this would be a slightly yellowed over natural finish from the beginning. However, this definitely has the stinky guitar that has been in a smoky environment for a long time, and then it has been covered up with something that absorbs the odor and leaves it smelling like mothballs. The extra ambered over headstock logo definitely tells me this was within a smoking collection for quite some time. But it's cool, we can see the multi-layers of wood right here within our pickup cavity, as well as our long neck tenon.
And then the bridge pickup cavity, we have a DB sign-off, and then a cool date code of January 10th, 1992. Most M3s have the pickguard, as we saw, so it's kind of nice not having that. We can easily see everything without having all the other additional screw holes. But I was able to confirm this particular model does start life as a satin finish. I wiped it down just to see if it was dirt and grime, but no. What really tipped me off that this should have started life full satin was our headstock, and especially the backside of the headstock where it's never been touched by hands. So I opted to not do a full super polish to maintain that satin finish, because that's what's great about documenting all these. There's other variances that were just lost to time, including satin and gloss finishes. Now for our tremolo unit. It is Gibson branded, and if you come over here it says made in Germany by Schaller. Seems to be just like any other Floyd Rose type system. Fine tuners go here, your bar secures in there. But as we talked about earlier, it's a master volume, master tone, and you do have a push-pull pot on your tone selection for splitting our humbuckers. That was my first time wiring one of those up. Thankfully, I got it my first try. Personally, I'm pretty suspicious of the switch tip being replaced at some point in time, but since I can't find a single other photo of this particular model, matches with the age natural of our neck. Moving on from our maple poplar walnut body, we get to talk about our maple neck. Frets polished up beautifully. We're going to have to restring this. But the definite key characteristic of this one is this particular inlay. Because you see how the other ones have so much other figuring within their acrylic? That one's just extra dark. When you look at that other person's YouTube video demoing this guitar, you'll easily be able to see that to identify this as being the exact same guitar. Surprisingly though, after cleaning the frets, there was hardly any wear underneath it. I don't think this was played too heavily, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a few nicks and dings in the top. But again, beggars can't be choosers. These M3s are so rare in the less common versions. Just in case you didn't notice, full 2-octave scale, 24 frets. This is a very non-Gibson 25.5-inch scale length. I get a nut width of 1.72 inches, 12th fret 2.09, first fret neck depth super skinny 0.78, only 0.84 by the 12th. Definitely one of the thinnest necks within Gibson's territory. Here's that neck at the first fret and the 12th fret, just a very slim C shape that gets rather wide feeling towards the 12th, but starts off pretty small. Then here we can see our beautiful satin finish. It's got some nicks and dings, and if you get it in the light just right, you can kind of see like some discolorations. I think that's just from the factory. There's our cool upside down ambered over Gibson logo. Unfortunately, the truss rod is getting close to the limited adjustability area, but we can see the worker sign-off initials there, and the truss rod still works just fine, so I'm not gonna mess with it. And it does utilize a locking nut system. It's just your pretty basic stuff. But what's cool about this is we actually have a black sawn-off truss rod cover instead of the tortoiseshell-like material that shrinks. So in many ways, the MIV-H Deluxe is less prone to damages by just being stored. Moving on to the backside. Unfortunately, I have not found a spare backplate cover, but I kind of like it being exposed because you get to see another layer of the walnut wood. For anybody curious for what the backside of the trem system looks like, there you go. You can also see an exposed layer of the dyed poplar. Unfortunately, it looks like I need to change the tip on my solder iron because it's definitely not getting hot enough, but it worked. Here's the other lead I had to put on, and then our red wire right there. A cool coffin-like shape. And the cover itself is pretty scratched up, but still present. We've got our black plastic output jack, and somebody has replaced our strap buttons with black ones. This is the correct original positioning for the strap button, but somebody moved it up here. And that must have happened very early on in this guitar's life, because you can actually see the discoloration of the finish, what it originally looked like before it changed colors as it aged. It seems a lot of people have issues with the strap button placements of the M3s. They're always moving it either here, some put it there. This is kind of ugly, but I could just sink another strap button in there to clean up the look, but I'm just going to leave it as is. The back has just got exceptional figuring. I love it. And yes, the maple body's multi-pieced, but you don't normally see it thanks to all your other woods. Sandwiched woods always fascinated me. It makes them look extra fancy. Moving up the backside of the neck, you can see how sculpted away the heel is. I just love that about these. And then moving up the rest, you've got some wood grain in the neck as well as some mild figuring. It's not as crazy as the last one, but at least we've got some. And then our serial number dates it to 1992, very early in the year. And you can see our Gibson branded Schaller tuners with a small ding up here on the headstock. I thought of something today. If you're like me and you really just don't care about Floyd Rose systems, I thought, hey, why don't we throw a bunch of quarters in here to completely block the trem system? That's a lot cheaper than one of those Dremel nose. So that's like $3.50 worth of quarters. I'm sure you could do it with like 3 stacks of pennies if you're really on a budget. But that made setting this thing back up and getting it in tune much easier. Now under blacklight, there was a very small surprise. So we've got a sticker shadow right underneath our Floyd Rose. I'm not exactly sure what this is referencing, but it looks like some sort of a fireball with a cat in the center. If you know what that's from, feel free to let me know. Keep in mind, it came out of Japan, so maybe it's something over there. But you've just got some light clear coat wear in the other locations. Nothing too crazy. The fretboard is lacquered, so it glows as well. And then we get to our headstock. Everything's looking pretty peachy up here. Something going on there, I'm not exactly too sure. This kind of looks like some of the dirt that I had initially rubbed off. Then of course we can see our filled-in Strat buttonhole a little bit more clearly, and the neck does not have too much finish worn off of it. Besides up here, took a good long hard look. I don't see any cracks or repairs or anything like that. So everything passes here with flying colors. But all said and done, this one weighs 7 pounds, 13.8 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. The neck is actually really mellow for a 496R. I like it. The bridge, being newer, has a nice bite to it. But yet it's really full and throaty. Then I feel the bridge kind of overpowers in the middle position, but that still has the nice chiminess. Now let's try our coil splits. I'm happy with it. Let's kick on some dirt. The tones are pretty fun when you're distorted too. I really like that coil split. Now that we know all about the Gibson MIII-H Deluxe, what are my final thoughts on this thing? I'm glad I took the chance and restored it and brought it back from Japan because this is just a phenomenal player. This really reminds me of the first M3 I tried. I just instantly fell in love with the thing. This one's got such ridiculously low action. It buzzes just a little bit in some locations, but for the most part, it's just so effortless to play this thing. The neck is blade thin. And I don't know if I showed you guys this earlier. On the edge of the neck, it makes it great for playing live on stage because you can easily see your markers. Like, it's obnoxiously big while you play. It takes a little bit to get used to, but once you've got it, it just makes it so much easier. And since I don't care too much about Floyd Rose's, blocking it off, that works out well for me, tuning stability wise, and I just love having all the different layers of wood here. They might not be the prettiest woods in the world, I mean, except for the back, that's pretty nice, but I really enjoyed this guitar. So yeah, that's another one for the M3 collection being documented. Alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.
If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.